a veil of green reflections upon their movements. In the room it must have been very still, and Plattner says the candle flame streamed up into a perfectly vertical line of smoke. But in his ears each footfall and its echoes beat like a clap of thunder. And the faces, two more particularly near the woman's, one a woman's also, white and clear-featured, a face which might have once been cold and hard, but which was now softened by the touch of a wisdom strange to earth. The other might have been the woman's father. Both were evidently absorbed in the contemplation of some act of hateful meanness, so it seemed, which they could no longer guard against and prevent. Behind were others, teachers it may be, who had taught ill, friends whose influence had failed, and over the man, too, a multitude, but none that seemed to be parents or teachers. Faces that might once have been coarse, now purged to strength by sorrow. And in the forefront one face, a girlish one, neither angry nor remorseful, but merely patient and weary, and, as it seemed to Plattner, waiting for relief. His powers of description fail him at the memory of this multitude of ghastly countenances. They gathered on the stroke of the bell. He saw them all in the space of a second. It would seem that he was so worked on by his excitement that quite involuntarily his restless fingers took the bottle of green powder out of his pocket and held it before him, but he does not remember that. Abruptly the footsteps ceased. He waited for the next, and there was silence, and then suddenly, cutting through the unexpected stillness like a keen thin blade, came the first stroke of the bell. At that the multitudinous faces swayed to and fro, and a louder crying began all about him. The woman did not hear. She was burning something now in the candle flame. At the second stroke everything grew dim, and a breath of wind, icy cold, blew through the host of watchers. They swirled about him like an eddy of dead leaves in the spring, and at the third stroke something was extended through them to the bed. You have heard of a beam of light? This was like a beam of darkness, and looking again at it, Plattner saw that it was a shadowy arm and hand. The green sun was now topping the black desolations of the horizon, and the vision of the room was very faint. Plattner could see that the white of the bed struggled and was convulsed, and that the woman looked around over her shoulder at it, startled. The cloud of watchers lifted high like a puff of green dust before the wind, and swept silently downward toward the temple in the gorge. Then suddenly Plattner understood the meaning of the shadowy black arm that stretched across his shoulder and clutched its prey. He did not dare turn his head to see the shadow behind the arm. With a violent effort, and covering his eyes, he set himself to run, made perhaps 20 strides, then slipped on a boulder and fell. He fell forward on his hands, and the bottle smashed and exploded as he touched the ground. In another moment he found himself, stunned and bleeding, sitting face to face with Lidgett in the old walled garden behind the school. There the story of Plattner's experience ends. I have resisted, I believe successfully, the natural disposition of a writer of fiction to dress up incidents of this sort. I have told the thing as far as possible in the order in which Plattner told it to me. I have carefully avoided any attempt at style, effect, or construction. It would have been easy, for instance, to have worked the scene of the deathbed into a kind of plot in which Plattner might have been involved. But quite apart from the objectionableness of falsifying a most extraordinary true story, any such trite device would spoil, to my mind, the peculiar effect of this dark world, with its livid green illumination and its drifting watchers of the living, which, unseen and unapproachable to us, is yet lying all about us. It remains to add that a death did actually occur in Vincent Terrace, just beyond the school garden, and so far as can be proved at the moment of Plattner's return. Deceased was a rate collector and insurance agent. His widow, who was much younger than himself, married last month a Mr. Whymper, a veterinary surgeon of Albleeding. As the portion of this story given here has in various forms circulated orally in Sussexville, she has consented to my use of her name, on condition that I make it distinctly known that she emphatically contradicts every detail of Plattner's account of her husband's last moments. She burnt no will, she says, although Plattner never accused her of doing so. Her husband made but one will, and that just after their marriage. Certainly, from a man who had never seen it, Plattner's account of the furniture of the room was curiously accurate. One other thing, even at the risk of an irksome repetition, I must insist upon, lest I seem to favor the credulous, superstitious view. Plattner's absence from the world for 9 days is, I think, proved, but that does not prove his story. It is quite conceivable that even outside space hallucinations may be possible. That, at least, the reader must bear distinctly in mind. End of The Plattner Story by H. G. Wells.